Right, we begin here. The Democratic Alliance and the Economic Freedom Fighters have welcomed the arrest of former Transnet executives in relation to corruption and fraud case. Former Transnet Group Chief Executive Brian Molefe and former Finance Head Anuj Singh were part of the group arrested this morning. The DA believes that the next step must be for the 41.2 billion rand in contracts that were awarded to companies linked to the Guptas and their associate Salima Essa to be recouped. Meanwhile, the EFF believes that the developments of today must be a step in the right direction in order to restore trust in the implementation of the rule of law. Molefe, Singh and other former top Transnet executives have been granted 50,000 rand bail. They appeared in the Palm Ridge Specialised Crimes Court earlier. This morning's arrests are in connection with the trillion payment saga involving locomotives. It is alleged that Transnet paid a trillion over 90 million rand for organising a 30 billion rand club loan to help buy over 1,000 locomotives in 2015. According to the findings of the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture, the figure subsequently ballooned to 54 billion rand. Molefe was Group Executive Brian Molefe and Singh, the Chief Financial Officers at the time.
After considering the evidence as per Exhibits G, H, I, and J, and after considering the submissions by the legal representatives of the four accused, being the applicants as well as the state, the court is of the view that it will be in the interest of justice that the four accused or applicants be admitted to bail. The application is therefore granted and bail is set in the amount of 50,000 rand for each of you.
The National Prosecuting Authority says it is confident in with what it has brought before the courts, and that once all accused have appeared, a final and will be brought to the court. SABC News reporter Mbalenhle Mtetra earlier spoke to the investigating directorate spokesperson Sindiswa Seboka.
With what we've brought to court, and once we've completed bringing all the accused before court, we'll then provide the final indictment, and then that can be read into the record.
Mbalenhle Mtetra from SABC News. Do you believe that you have a strong case at this stage?
So the main task and role of the NPA is to make sure that we bring cases to court that we believe stand the test. Currently, we believe that those particular cases that we're bringing to court stand the test, including this particular one. However, it's not in our purview or in our mandate to then dictate as to whether they will be successful or not in court.
All right, we're now joined via Zoom by Stefanie Fick. She's the Executive Director of the Accountability Division for Organisation and Doing Tax Abuse, to weigh in on these developments regarding Transnet executives being arrested this morning. Good afternoon to you. Thanks very much for joining us here on SABC News.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Flo.
All right, let's start here. OUTA has been calling for action on those implicated in state capture. As far as Transnet is concerned, what is your reaction then this afternoon to the arrests?
You're rather late than never, but we are glad that, the NPA is starting to round up all the implicated in Transnet. I think it is definitely a step in the right direction. They are still a little bit, behind. We need more arrests and we need more implicated in front of the court. But I mean, this is really, I think, as South Africans, we can celebrate today that the accused and the implicated in that deal was brought before court, and that they now will face some serious charges, and let's see what happens. If the NPA is confident, they will be found guilty of very serious transgressions.
There was question marks around the issue of Glencore, and I'm sure you would have known that as this has been raised, and they were certainly found guilty in other countries. Will you as OUTA also be raising red flags around Glencore?
Well, Glencore, per se, we weren't involved in. The only way in terms of state capture where we were involved.
Yeah, the issue of them was raised during state capture. their issue was raised during state capture. So I'm asking if you'll also be pushing, because I think that as OUTA, you'd want everyone who's guilty to be found guilty and indeed to face prosecution. So my question is, will you then be pushing for Glencore, or questions rather, asking questions is what I'm asking you.
Yeah, no, of course. Each and every person that was involved in corrupt dealings with government, in the sense that they are, wasted our taxpayers' money. Of course, we have limited resources in the sense that we can't make sure that, that's the NPA's job, but we can advocate for each and every person that was involved. Doesn't matter who you are, that was involved in state capture and cost this money an enormous amount of money. And,
so OUTA,
isn't
just some
evil.
clarification. So OUTA will be advocating for questions to be asked around Glencore, since the issue was raised during state capture. And given that, of course, Glencore has been found guilty elsewhere.
Well, I am wary to comment on something that I personally do not really have knowledge of. If they were implicated, and that evidence is because we concentrated on certain areas in state capture, but I do invite anybody. And if you have information that Glencore was involved, then yes, of course, if they were involved in state capture, if it's not us, then each and every person should advocate for anybody, whether that is Glencore or anybody else, that's implicated, should be brought before court. And you know what we tend to forget? It's also not just about people being prosecuted. I think it is also time that, let's take, for example, Glencore, that if they are involved in shady dealings with government, that as private, as private institutions, business, government should stop doing business with companies. And I'm not, we can't say here that anyone was found guilty, but anybody that is implicated, that we should stop doing business with them.
You've expressed the fact that you are confident that something will happen from this point. I take it then that you've taken a look, even if you've skimmed through it, through the charge sheet. What do you believe to be that, I'll say the ultimate crime that would then put, the final nail in the coffin for those former Transnet executives, if you've taken a look at some of those charges that have been brought forward?
Well, I think it ranges from contraventions of our Public Finance Management Act, fraud, money laundering. In other words, that money, if you, for example, look at the China Development Bank transaction, where we paid 189 million rand to an organization like Regiments for arranging this deal and transaction costs, and that money would then flow to so many other companies. That's where the money laundering comes in. I think, although the NPA clearly stated that they will wait until all accused are before court so that they can finalize the indictment, I do believe that if you look at the facts and you look at the testimonies, that you're probably looking at various counts of fraud, money laundering, and contraventions of the PFMA. I can specifically remember that Mrs. Mokgato, way in the beginning, she worked at Transnet, and although she resigned inevitably, and I think she was most probably pushed out because she alerted the fact that, Transnet is busy transgressing some of the Public Finance Management Act sections.
So I heard from the defense team, they were saying, we're ready for this trial and for prosecution. So from the fact that they're saying that they're so ready, we would then assume that any delays, should there be any, won't necessarily be from the defense side. And I say this because, we've often watched where people are so excited that, people are being arrested and, people are being put before the law, and these cases sort of drag on. And the consequence of that is what? Is us paying again, and the state having to finance these long drawn out. So, that level of excitement, it then goes back to the fact that we're losing money yet again, the state losing money again. So how can you, as you started your sentence, said, we should celebrate this, but knowing that it might actually just be another long drawn out court process, which is likely the case as we've seen when it comes to these big sort of cases?
It is a double-edged sword, unfortunately, because on the one hand, I think as South Africans, we are craving accountability and we are craving that, people are behind bars, never mind just appearing. We are craving for people actually be behind bars. We are craving for the asset forfeit unit to go and grab some of the funds if they can so that we can get some of it back. But then on the other hand, that's why I'm saying we need to celebrate. Otherwise, as South Africans, we can't lose hope that, that there is hope on the horizon. But then we have a beautiful democracy and we worked hard to establish democracy, and then we have our constitution. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on where you sit, an accused has got a right to a fair trial. Just as the state, because they are representing us as a society, and the witnesses has got a right to a fair trial. And when you are the accused, whether you are innocent or whether you believe you're innocent, whether you are guilty, believe you are guilty, you have a right to the process. So we should advocate for and hold thumbs for is that this process actually, in 10 years' time, we're not still talking about this, that it will actually happen. But you know what? I think we just need to believe and trust in the system that you can run, but you cannot hide.
All right, Stefanie Fick, many thanks to you. She's the Executive Director of the Accountability Division for OUTA Organisation Undoing Tax Abuse, weighing in, of course, on the developments regarding Transnet executives this morning.